exits for position. Goes around the outside, it's in his team.
Qualified.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Barely Qualified, a Formula One podcast. We took a little bit of time off. Didn't really do a pre-Saudi Arabian Grand Prix pod. Life gets in the way. We're coming to you guys today via Discord. We're your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca.
I'm Brandon Wood.
There he is, Brandon Wood, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix 2024. What a weekend? Question mark for some.
It was maybe not the most exciting racing we've seen on track in the past year or two, but definitely a lot of cool things that happened this weekend. A lot to get into, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, what a weekend for, let's just talk about it. The man of the hour, Ollie Bearman, jumping in. Carlos Sainz having to have an emergency, what was it, an appendectomy?
Correct.
Is that what it's called? An emergency appendectomy. Heading into FP3, Ollie Bearman steps in and kind of just steals the show. And thank God, because there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah, very reminiscent to 2022 when Albon had the same ailment, appendicitis, and Nick DeVries came in and filled in for him, impressing a lot of people. And Oliver Bearman able to do very much the same thing, if not be more impressive, considering his situation. So very cool to see him come in and do such a great job. He was able to have some running in the Haas car last year in a couple of the practice sessions, as all the other teams do, having some junior drivers in there. So I think that kind of helped prepare Ollie a little bit for coming into this weekend. He only had the third practice session to be able to get up to speed, familiar with the Ferarri car. He had been doing some testing, I guess, in like some sim stuff, but most of the sim duties are actually carried out by Robert Schwartzman, who's the normal Ferrari reserve driver, but he's also competing in the LMH series right now. So he wasn't able to be there this weekend, which is why Ollie filled in. So
I was wondering why it was Ollie Bearman and not Robert Schwartzman, because Robert Schwartzman's driven the Ferrari before, hasn't he? He's actually stepped in and done sessions in that. And this was Bearman's first time in that car ever. And he had two sessions. Or not even two sessions. Two sessions. The practice and then quali.
Yeah, practice, quali. And then, only missed out on Q3 by, 0.003 of a second?
Yeah.
Something like that. So very good first showing in the qualifying session for Ollie. And then, sure enough, carried that into the race.
Yeah.
Started off really strong. He was in there battling with Tsunoda very, very early on, and was able to make a move under the safety car, or after the safety car restart, and made it happen.
He makes an illegal move under safety car. It was beautiful.
Yeah, no. He waited till it was legal, but he made it happen. And overall, just really cool to see someone have an opportunity like this and actually nail it out of the park.
Yeah,
it's cool. Just seeing little glimmers of what the future is going to look like. For the sport,
God forbid he actually does go down the Nick DeVries path. But fucking good on Ollie Bearman, dude. Coming in at a track A like Jeddah, B under such actual extreme circumstances, to just get the call yo, FP3 is coming up in a few hours. You need to get over here, and you're going to be taking over Carlos's duties for this weekend, because it was pretty short notice. If I remember,
he was in the middle of preparation for his F2 race when they got the call.
Yeah, luckily he was doing the feature race there that weekend, so he was on standby, quote, or at least available. But yeah, a great debut. It's going to be a shame if there's not a seat available for him when he is primed and ready, but that is the nature of F1. That's the state that we're in right now.
So Io Komatsu, the new team principal of Haas, has already kind of had Ollie on his radar, apparently, from last year. He was really impressed with Ollie's run in the practice session. So I think after this past weekend, 2025, we could see Ollie in one of those Haas seats.
That would be fantastic, because he got a great view of it for all of about 30 laps on Saturday's race. So he should be pretty familiar with at least the rear end of how that car is going to function, because he was sandwiched in between two of them for quite a while.
Yeah. So, like we said, a great start for Oliver Bearman. Also, a pretty decent start for Charles Leclerc, who started off second on the grid. had Checo starting from third, I believe. So he was feeling the pressure a little bit, was able to hold off Checo for about the first lap or so. And then sure enough, Checo, like he should be doing, makes the move, gets himself into second. And then basically from there on out, we have a Red Bull dominating 1-2 through the rest of the race.
Yeah, it
so
was
not
looking
much
like
to
it was
talk about at the front of the grid, but
yeah, it was looking like it was going to be a Red Bull 1-2 to start things off, but Charles put in a nice heater of a lap in Q3 to get himself up into that P2 slot, which was like a bit of all the excitement that we were going to get on the weekend, in terms of, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? That was like a little bit of a taste. And then, like you said, Checo does what he has to do, kind of really making a bid for himself for that 2025 slot in the Red Bull. So far, as we've seen it in these first two races, he's doing the job that he's supposed to do there. So
yeah, good on Checo for doing everything he should be doing, checking off the boxes.
Checoing off the boxes.
Also, at the start of the race, we saw Lando Norris with a false start, which wasn't quite big enough to trigger a penalty, but I think definitely shook him up a little bit and kind of gave him a little bit of put him on the back foot for the beginning stint of that race.
Yeah, he had after that false start, he never really seemed to get his footing. Like he kind of just, I don't know how many places he fell back, if any, but he never gained any real pace. Well, whereas Oscar seemed to have like a pretty solid race underneath him. It wasn't like a world beater of a performance, because that McLaren just kind of isn't a world beater of a car right now. But Lando seemed a little bit like he was on, shaky legs for the entirety of that race. He did lead for a second at one point, but it was like you knew that wasn't going to last, and then he kind of ended up falling back to where he was supposed to.
Yeah, lap 6, Lance Stroll, when he hit the wall, causing a safety car, both Lando, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg all stayed out. I think of the three, I think Lando and Hamilton, it kind of maybe ended up hurting them a little bit in the long run. Hulk, for different reasons, which we'll get into, ended up working out for him, being able to nab that point. But overall, a pretty underwhelming weekend for both McLarens and the Mercedes. Lewis very vocal many times on the radio about the McLarens being much faster top speed.
Yeah, their straight line speed was a lot faster than the Mercedes.
Which, when you take a step back, is actually kind of very disheartening, because if you look at the McLarens compared to, say, the Ferraris or the Red Bulls, they're actually very far back in speed. So, a little rough.
And double painful, because that's a Mercedes power unit inside of that McLaren. So, yowza.
Yeah. So I guess maybe not as much of the cooling issues as last weekend for Mercedes, but still expected them to be a little bit higher up than they were. So not quite sure what that means for this car design that they're stuck with through the rest of this cycle. But I think it's George and Lewis are going to have a rough go.
Yeah, it's not looking so hot. You know what I've noticed, though, is that George has kind of like kept his cool a little bit more. He's a little bit more like smiley and just kind of like, this is kind of like he's settled into his place at Mercedes and in F1, whereas like a few years ago, he was very smarmy and like, oh, like, I'm going to be the greatest. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that no matter what. It's almost like he's settling in to just accepting his plight. Am I saying that I'm no longer the president of the George Russell Hater Fan Club, of which you are the co-chair? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying I've lightened up.
Yeah, I think that some of that's probably because he knows that he's going to be probably the number one guy next year. He doesn't really he's not really under threat as much as he may seem. So,
I mean, the rumor mill remains to be seen on that. Who knows? There are some hot dogs coming into that team potentially, according to the rumor mill, which I think we'll save for another episode. Yeah. But Mercedes not having a great time. They were part of that, or at least Lewis was part of, a lot of the storylines, almost losing out to Ollie Bearman in qualies, being stuck behind Ollie and Lando in those final few laps of the race. Let's talk real quick while we're on that subject. What was going on with those soft tires? Because Lewis and Lando had gone really long on their first stint on mediums, like really long.
Mm-hmm.
They extended the tire life of that first stint past that safety car to, I think, the 40 lap point almost. Did their late pit stop, put on a pair of used softs. Now, we'll make that point. But everybody was expecting, myself included, that they were going to be catching up to Ollie Bearman and putting themselves in that top 5 echelon, hopefully, maybe trying to, get up there with, let's see, who finished top 5? With George and Alonso. And they just never really did. I think they gained about 3 seconds each and put themselves on the tail of Ollie Bearman, but those tires really never came to life, or they just degraded too quick. But that was pretty crazy to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, from what I understand, the pace advantage on the soft tires only really lasted a couple of laps.
Yeah.
So, once that kind of went away, that advantage just kind of fell back. And I think one of the things that the feedback that a lot of the teams were giving on, especially the hard tires, were that they could have gone the whole race just on the hard set. So I think, between the mediums and the softs, the hards were kind of just such a reliable tire through the weekend that there wasn't really much advantage to be had overall through the whole race.
Would have been a 200 IQ play if somebody had started the race on a pair of used soft tires. Lance Stroll hits the wall. You throw on those hards, and then you just go there throughout. Because you would have had a crazy pace advantage off the line, Let's
see what else we got here. So, Haas. Not the greatest qualifying for Haas. They kind of screwed up their strategy a little bit. They had linked up Hulk with a little bit of a tow from K-Mag. He ends up running into a little bit of traffic. Not the greatest qualifying lap for them. In the race, K-Mag gets caught up with a couple 10-second penalties, pretty much throwing his race in the trash. But Haas using this as an opportunity, and Kevin using his track position and his great defensive driving skills, manages to keep Tsunoda and who else was in that pack?
It was Yuki. Who was behind Yuki? Bearman was there for a little bit. But he was able to get around it. Lance Stroll, Alex Albon was part of that crew. It was like a 4-car pileup. I think George might have been back there for a second. I don't know. Ricardo was there. Hulkenberg was there.
Yeah. So, what K-Mag was able to pull off in doing this was keeping those cars behind so that when Nico, when he made his late stop, because he had stayed out under safety car, he would have came out in the middle of that pack of cars. Mm-hmm. So K-Mag building that huge gap for him being able to come out in front, was able to have clear air and just kind of ride it back into points.
Yeah.
And at this stage of the season, for Haas to be in this position, this is exactly what they need to be doing, right? Like all the other teams that were behind them right now, we got the Sauber, Alpine, Williams, all struggling at the beginning of the season. Haas needs to be, nabbing up these points while they can, right?
Yeah.
So as the other teams start to get their pace together, if they're not, at least on par with that, they're going to lose these opportunities. So for them to make the most of it now, using this strategy, this team strategy to be able to secure this point was amazing to see, and leaves me optimistic for the rest of the year for them. So.
Yeah, dude, it was actually like a really genius move. They pretty much sacrificed Kevin's entire race. Like they had him off track. They had him getting, what were the 2 penalties that he got? Because I know he went off track on one of them. Another one was like
10-second penalty for his move on Tsunoda, and another 10-second penalty after the stewards judge. He gained an advantage for running off the track after passing.
So
Tsunoda.
One of them was just like, dangerous driving, and the other one was overtaking off track. And they basically just like left him. He didn't give that place back. They were just like, fuck it, just stay in the running, hold everybody back, and they sacrificed him. They used Kevin as a battering ram. They tipped him over horizontally, put a helmet on top of him, and then just like rammed him through the pack, and then used him as a door stopper to hold everybody up. He punched a hole through the air and then stopped the entire traffic up.
Yeah, I mean, I think he deserves a little more credit than that. I mean, his driving was pretty great. He got passed by Sonoda and then immediately passed him back within a couple turns and was able to keep him behind.
Yeah,
So
it
overall,
was
amazing drive.
it was a good drive. Like to be, in my opinion, to be like, oh, it was like this amazing defensive drive. It was a little dirty of a defensive drive to me. Like it was on shaky ground, but I mean, he still did pull it off without making contact and kind of just flying under the radar of catching another penalty or whatever may have happened after that. But I thought it was just a brilliant move by Haas.
Yeah, maybe not quite a Alex Albon from last year type defensive drive, but definitely worthy of some extra credit points.
Yeah, it was them just being like, "Yo, we're gonna get these points no matter how we get them, and we're gonna keep them." It's like when somebody scores a sloppy goal and you go, "We'll take it." Yeah, no shit, you're gonna take it. But I think I said like heading into the season, if Haas scores any points, it will be a miracle. Do you believe in miracles? Yes, they got it. I mean, 2 weeks ago, sitting here, I would have told you you're crazy, but here they are. That point's going to be very, very valuable coming, end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Every point matters, and just this 1 point puts them up into sixth place.
Crazy
constructors, so,
absolutely insane.
Huge. But yeah, I mean, looking forward to Australia. See, I'm guessing Carlos should be healed up, should be back in the car, I would assume. So
yeah, it'll be a nice return. I think this race would have shaken out a lot differently had Carlos been available. Not to slight Ollie Bearman, because again, I want to riz him up to the absolute max. But it would have been a different result. I think, the Aston Martins wouldn't have fared as well as they did, or at least Fernando. Probably throw the McLarens in there as well. Would have shaken things up. So it'll be nice to get Carlos, the number one Ferrari driver, back for Australia.
All right. Well, do we have some props and
Props?
All right. Sorry. Start this again.
No, that stays in.
All right. So do we have some props and flops?
Yes.
Saudi Arabia.
Let's start with the props. Obviously, we all know who it has to go to. It's going to Ollie Bearman. Big prop to Ollie Bearman. Emergency call-up. Does a great job. The 3 sweetest words in motorsport: points on debut. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I was thinking, if he moves up one place, gets 10th, that's going to be a huge success. So
yeah,
for him to be up in 7th and holding off, just in the last stint of the race, picking up this pace and holding that pace and being able to stay ahead of Lando and the 8-time champ, Lewis Hamilton. Pretty great.
Ooh, throwing some shade. I was a little indignant on, I don't even know if that's the right word. I was a little down the middle of the road on Ollie Bearman. Indifferent, yeah. I was a little indifferent on Ollie Bearman. Like, at the halfway point of the race, I think I was texting you, and I was like, he's doing okay. He's about where he was at. But he was able to get the move done and move himself ahead of the K-Mag train, and great debut. If you look back to some of the other greats who've entered the sport, they can't really say the same, and they, at the same time, weren't in as good of a car, but you can't credit it just to, the Ferrari. When you look back at like Max Verstappen's debut, I'm pretty sure he DNF'd in a Toro Rosso. Lewis, I don't remember. I want to say Lewis actually podiumed on his debut, but I don't remember. Anyway, still like just a great debut in a good car. I don't know what else to say. Good on you. Prop.
World class.
Yeah.
My props are just going to go to Haas. Just taking full advantage of their opportunity, getting that point, and maybe a little tip of the cap to Ayo Komatsu coming through.
Amen.
Tampering our expectations and delivering when it really counts. So
yeah, I'm gonna be full of hat and crow by the end of this season, because I've been hating on Haas and I was hating on Ayo, talking about just shuffling the deck chairs around with them, getting rid of Gunter or letting him walk. But big brain stuff this weekend, and 2 good showings so far out of the gate from both of them.
Yeah, I think, if they can gain a little bit over the next, 5 or 6 races, be feeling really good. I just hope that they can maintain,
Yeah,
so
I think the future's bright, especially if they can get rid of K-Mag next year and get Oliver Bearman in that seat. That would be That'd be top notch for them.
I'm gonna go straight to my flop. I'm gonna say 2 thumbs down for Lance Stroll. Hitting the wall,
Oh,
man. You can't be doing that. He did it in what was that, practice 2 or 1?
um,
One of the practices he hit. I don't know if don't think it was the same corner, but in very similar fashion, clips the wall.
I thought it
and,
was the same corner.
Just it might have been.
I think it might have been the exact same corner that he hit 2 times.
It's just not a good look, man. You guys not starting off this season with the same advantage that they had last year, and you know, Lance needs to be doing his part. At this point, it seems like Fernando's just out there, the only one really fighting for this team. So it's just a bad look for Lance. You need to execute. You can't make those little mistakes, and you got to get points when you can. And there's a lost opportunity this weekend. So
Yeah, Lance was going to be one of mine, but I will go different. But I got to say, I wholeheartedly agree with you. You can't be making the exact same mistake that you made in a practice in the race, especially when you're basically running on a solo lap. He spun on his own, on his absolute own. Or not spun, but he hit the wall. It wasn't like he was forced into the wall. Just clipped it. And I did hear that at the Jeddah circuit, those walls aren't as rounded as you think. Like you think that you could ride the wall, a little bit because it would be rounded. Sort of like in Monaco, those how you can kind of put your wheel up against the wall and just like make the turn right around it. Apparently, some of those walls, some of those turns are kinked out and they have like a jagged edge to them, not like a completely rounded board or whatever, but it's got like a little jagged edge and it'll just pop out at you. But if you're a driver, if we as fans know that, you as a driver have to know that. You're the ones who are out there actually doing it, and you've hit that corner before or hit one similar to it, you have to be better. Definitely a flop to him.
Yeah.
I got 2 more. I'm going to say a flop to Lewis. I think, Lewis, you got to be better. Not a whole lot of pace. I don't really know what he was struggling with apart from George, but he seems to be a little bit.
I mean, they were both struggling,
But Lewis just did not have it in the same way that George was like actually still putting up a fight, at least, from what I saw.
Well, I think at that point of the race or at least towards the later stages of the race, they had been on different strategies, right? So
yeah,
I think Lewis kind of lost some time just because of that. But I think definitely throughout the weekend, especially in qualifying, Lewis should have been further up there.
Yeah, when you're
George qualifying third, it's was it third? Yeah,
Max Leclerc, Checo, Alonso, George, or maybe no, George qualified 7th because it was the 2 McLarens that finished in there.
Yeah, so I guess Lewis qualifying right behind Russell. So I guess, but still, I kind of anticipated Lewis just to be a little bit more on top of it this weekend, especially after last weekend being on the back foot. It just, it's obviously he's struggling. Like we said earlier, he's very vocal on the radio, just expressing to his team that he's frustrated at the lack of pace and them just not having the top speed of their sister team, as you might want to say. But it's frustrating. I bet Lewis is probably only got a few more races left of this before he starts checking out and thinking about that red Ferrari.
Thinking about that Ferrari seat, yeah. I mean, to be the 7-time world champion in a not great car, I think you should still be better. Let me rephrase that. You're still Lewis Hamilton in a not so great car. I think you should be running a little better than you were. To be almost ousted in Q3 by a rookie who's sitting in the car for his 2nd time, just not a good look. So flop to him. And then I'm just going to give a quick flop to Daniel Ricciardo. Looking like absolute dog shit. And I know that the RB team as a whole isn't looking great, but Yuki Tsunoda's running a whole lot better than him, and Daniel Ricciardo's out there spinning on his own in clean air. I think it's looking like the Yuki show continues at RB. He's probably just going to be the Daniel Kvyat of that team, go nowhere, just be the benchmark for who's good and who's not, and Liam Lawson's going to come in and snake that seat from DR.
Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe your prediction of we'll get a driver change mid-season is going to come true, and it's going to involve Daniel Ricciardo the way that we thought, but not Daniel Ricciardo taking Checo's seat, but Liam Lawson taking Daniel Ricciardo's.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I think just the fact that Yuki's been able to carry that momentum from last year, he was doing very much the same thing at the end of the year last year, just consistently being better than Daniel and qualifying and in the race. Maybe only on a few occasions did he get bested, but
yeah,
I think
pretty funny because last week we were singing a different tune.
Right. So how quickly things change. You know? So over the next couple of races, if Yuki's consistently qualifying better and putting himself in the right position, I think the team may make a switch, as far as like who they want to, give the advantageous position to, so.
Yeah. Cool. Is that about it?
I think so. We got a week off next weekend, so we'll come back with a proper preview for Australia. There's going to be a lot to get into. I think there's going to be a lot of drama unfolding between now and then. There's the whole Red Bull internal matters that have been just bubbling and slowly percolating to the surface in different aspects. But
there's the MBS drama that's going on.
All kinds of stuff. So
I think we're going to have to do
resolution. We're
going to have to do a Australia preview, but I think we're going to have to just do a drama episode here pretty soon too.
Yeah. Like I said to you on the last week or so, I said about the only prestige TV show plotline left to happen this season is for someone to wind up dead. So hopefully we don't see that, but
maybe Jimmy Hoffa's buried underneath one of these tracks and they dig him up.
Hey.
That wraps up the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It was Max Verstappen from Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Yeah, we'll see you guys next time with a Australian Grand Prix preview. Peace.
Cheers.